5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a level check. Meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer. Not able to speak very well because of some congestion, but overall, be with you in under 2 minutes, everyone. We have lots to talk about today. Okay, let's see. Got to start these other two thingies up here. Okay, once again, level check, level check, level check. Looks like it's going through to all the places. It's now 7:14, and under a minute, I'll be with you with a live streaming weather show. Alrighty, hi everybody, Meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer coming to you from the streaming center at Fox 19 now. It is going to be a busy week or so weather-wise across the United States. Take a look at this, not very busy around here. Excuse me, 66 degrees at the International Airport and the sky crystal clear. Now with a crystal clear sky with low humidity, heat escapes to space very quickly, and we'll see many areas tomorrow morning in the low 40s and some in the upper 30s. Especially if you live in a rural area down in the valley, more than likely you'll see 37, 38, or 39 for a short time in the morning. Okay, so we are talking about quite a bit of activity. Of course, the big talker here is Hurricane Milton, already historic. I'll explain that coming up. I've prepared some graphics for you. So let's go ahead and start talking about Hurricane Milton. All right, first of all, and you'll see this full screen, the fastest hurricanes to strengthen from Cat 1 to Cat 5. Wilma in 2005 strengthened from Cat 1 to Cat 5 in 12 hours. Maria and Milton, the current hurricane, made it from Cat 1 to Cat 5 in 18 hours. Felix, Dean, Andrew, and Anita took 24 hours to make it from Cat 1 to Cat 5. So in that respect, Milton is tied for second fastest, making it to Cat 5, making it already an historic hurricane, and it hasn't had landfall. It's just out over open water. So that's a pretty impressive statistic right there. Now, take a look at this, and we'll look at this more full screen. What we're looking at here, this is the surface of the ocean, and this is a temperature graph as you go down through the ocean. And this isn't just something made up. I actually found a bunch of they're called floats, in their instrument systems that literally sense the temperature down here. They have a long extension. They have thermometers or temperature sensors at different elevations, and in addition to that, they have temperature, air temperature, and wind, and it's a weather station, but also an oceanographic station. And they're all over the world, and there are a bunch in the Gulf of Mexico. This one was a NOAA buoy or platform that is north of the Yucatan Peninsula and kind of right in the path of Hurricane Milton. So what happens is the average surface water temperature around that part of the Gulf is about 86 Fahrenheit. That's a lot. Okay, now if you go all the way down to 120 feet below the surface, it's still 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, years ago, we didn't have this much data available, but when you did have data, you'd be impressed if it was 86 degrees at the surface and 80 feet down, it was 86 degrees. That would be really remarkable. But in this case, it's 86 down to 120 feet. It's 80 degrees all the way down to 222 feet below sea level. Okay, and I rounded those off. That might be 221.8 or something, but I rounded them to the nearest digit. So this and whenever we were in school and studying this, they always told you that think in terms of 80 degrees Fahrenheit as being like kind of the minimum to sustain a hurricane. So why is this important? Not only is it the surface water, but it's how warm it is and how deep that warm water extends, because this arrow represents what a hurricane does. As a hurricane, especially a strong one like Milton, it churns up the water. So you end up getting some of the water from below brought to the surface. Well, if the cold water is too far down, it can't churn the ocean up enough to bring cold water to the surface, and that's one of the things that limits how strong hurricanes can be and how long they can stay strong. If the hurricane can churn up deep water, bring it all the way up to the surface, that decreases the amount of energy available to the hurricane to do what a hurricane does. Okay? In this case, it's the same temperature 120 feet down. That's a lot to churn up. Down to 222 feet below sea level, it's still 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and very rarely does a hurricane get strong enough, and even Milton's not strong enough, to churn up water from 400 feet down. Okay? In other words, it's really this much of the surface. And this is occurring because, and people always talk about global warming and all that, and the Earth's warming, no doubt about it. Most of the warming, about 90% of it by most estimates, most of the warming that's occurred on Earth occurs in the ocean waters. And just think about it. I mean, the oceans are really deep, and they cover 2/3 of the Earth's surface. So a lot of the sunshine, a lot of the heat ends up in the ocean water and stays there, and eventually it works its way down. So we've got a really deep layer of warm water. So when a hurricane gets rolling, like Milton did, it's Category 1, it begins to move into an area where the surface water is warm and it's warm way down, and it can't churn up any cool water from below, and it just has all that energy to work with. Now, it requires atmospheric conditions being right and all that, but the oceanic part of this is the fact that the surface water is warm, it's warm, really warm, that warm down to 120 feet below the surface, and even warm enough to sustain a hurricane down to 222 feet below the surface in this location. And it's pretty common throughout. When you get down to 480 feet, it's still 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, so it's still warm down there, but 80 degrees is essentially kind of what we think of as the limit for water being warm enough to sustain a hurricane. So even if this thing is churning up water from 200 feet down, it's still got enough heat to maintain the hurricane. But because still so much of the surface water is at 86 Fahrenheit, that hurricane has a lot of warm water to work with. Now, one of the things that happens, just think in terms of if you're a runner, a bicycle rider, or even if you just are at a stadium and you run up the steps to your seat, you can't run forever. In other words, you can run for a while and you use energy faster than your body can regenerate it and make it available. Same thing happens in a hurricane. So what will happen here is even though the water that it's going to encounter is still really, really warm, it's going to use energy at a faster rate than it can tap the energy out of the water, in other words, that it can use that energy. So just like humans, hurricanes oftentimes will run along at Cat 5, have to slow down, regain strength after it recovers, so as more energy works into the system. So one of the limiting factors, oceanic limiting factors, we're not talking about atmospheric, is how much warm water there is. Not just how warm it is at the surface, but how deep that warm layer is. And this is a really deep warm layer in the Gulf of Mexico, so there's plenty of energy to work with. But there are other limiting factors. It's still going to utilize energy faster than it can pull it out of the water. So that's a limiting factor there. And they do expect it to begin to decrease in intensity. And we'll look at the latest track forecast from the Hurricane Center here in a couple seconds. But that's it. I mean, that is what's happened with these hurricanes as of late. Okay? It took 18 hours to go from a Category 1 to a very strong, and it's actually based on wind speed, it's one of the strongest hurricanes to ever be in the Gulf of Mexico already. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that, okay? So here are the strongest hurricane winds measured in the Gulf of Mexico since we have data, okay? So obviously a couple hundred years ago there could have been some stronger ones, but in the modern era when we actually have data, Hurricane Allen in 1980 entered the Gulf of Mexico with 190 mile an hour winds. Okay, the second strongest was the Labor Day hurricane. They didn't name them back then, and so this one is just well known as the Labor Day hurricane. Ended up hitting the western part of the Florida Panhandle. It was in 1933. It had 185 mile an hour sustained winds, so that was second. Rita in 2005. Rita was Rita was one of the hurricanes. Wilma was the other, and of course you know the other one in 2005. But Rita had 180 mile an hour winds in 2005, that very active year. And look at Milton. As of the latest update that we had, the winds were 180 miles an hour, so it is tied for the third strongest hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico based on the sustained wind speeds. And Camille had 175 mile an hour winds back in 1969, and that is a famous one too. So Allen in 1980, I actually remember that. I was working in TV back then. I remember that one. Labor Day hurricane of 1933, I don't remember that. And then, of course, Rita and Milton, I do remember quite well. And as a matter of fact, when we were down in Louisiana for Ike, Rita had done immense damage. Many cattle ranchers were wiped out because they tried to move their cattle inland far enough, and there was such a high storm surge that even though they moved their cattle inland 10 to 20 miles, most of them were killed, and a lot of the cattle ranchers went out of business as a result of Rita. Excuse me a second. Oh, excuse me. It's going to take me a second, so. Excuse me, I'll be right with you. Okay, I am back. So, I'm looking up some other information. I just can't seem to find it. Okay, I was looking up on the Atlantic hurricane season because we don't have. Okay. Well, this is such a mess. Boy, this Wikipedia article is so hard to read. But 2005, I was looking up here, there was $172.297 billion worth of damage in 2005. Now, 2017 exceeded that, but in 2005, that, up to that time, had been the greatest amount of damage, and I'm thinking that this year is probably going to be worse because Helene has already done immense damage. The numbers haven't even been computed yet, and of course we end up with this one coming our way, Milton, and Milton has done immense damage also. So okay, so let's see. So Milton is a Category 5 with 190 mile an hour sustained winds, 180 mile an hour sustained winds at the present time. Okay, the gusts are at 220 miles per hour. And of course, as that heads off to the north and east, once it makes its turn, it's going to drop from a Category 5. Now look how long it's going to be a Category 5. From where it is right now, that's that first symbol, all the way up into the open Gulf of Mexico, drops to a Cat 4, a few hundred miles off the coast of Florida, and then right now the forecast has it coming onshore between Sarasota and Tampa during the early morning hours of Thursday, so just after midnight, like 2 a.m. on Thursday, with 125 mile an hour sustained winds. And it means higher wind gusts, probably 150 mile an hour wind gust. And as the governor of Florida said earlier today, on a news conference I saw him on, he goes, we still have a lot of debris piled up from Helene. That's going to become airborne and very dangerous. So this next hurricane could be an additional problem. But one other thing you should notice here is look at this. Category 3 onshore, it crosses the entire Florida peninsula and is still a Category 1 as it makes its way back out into the Atlantic. Okay, so it's a monstrous problem for Florida right now. Notice that Orlando's in there, Tampa, Sarasota. It's going to be very close to Cape Coral and Fort Myers. Horseshoe Beach may be involved in some of that. And of course, since here's the center of the forecast track, it's this area from Marco Island to Fort Myers to Cape Coral to Sarasota, where you're going to get the greatest onshore flow. Remember, it circulates like this. So here's the onshore flow, and that's the greatest threat of inundation and flooding from the storm surge. And then the good news is that if you look at this, it goes out to the east into the Atlantic and dies out, according to that forecast from the Hurricane Center. So for the people that have been battered from eastern Tennessee and northern Georgia on up into especially western North Carolina, eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, those areas that got flooded so badly from Helene, there's not going to be any effect from this one at all. This storm is more powerful than Helene as far as its wind speeds and that goes. It's more compact. I mean, it's not tiny, but it's not. I mean, at one point when I was doing this, we had winds from Helene increasing here in Corpus Christi, Texas, at the same time they were increasing over here along the east coast of Florida. So this spanned more than 1,000 miles. This one's more compact as it moves to the north and east. So it's going to be damaging, it's going to be a nightmare, but it's not going to have the widespread impact that Helene had for two reasons. One, it's smaller, and the other reason is because it's going directly across the peninsula and then out into the Atlantic Ocean. So man, I tell you what, this one is just a mess. Oh wow, we've got a breaking news alert that a medical helicopter has crashed in Owen County, and that's all I know about it. If I see anything else come across, I'll let you know before we are done here. Okay, I'm trying to get back to Facebook. All right, so what we're looking at then is another big problem. And again, this right now, it's going to come onshore. The eye is Thursday at 2 a.m. with 125 mile an hour winds. And the other thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be onshore to begin causing damage. When it's out here, you're going to get storm surge flooding, you're going to get winds. It's going to be, and it's out here at a Category 4 at 2 p.m. Wednesday, so you're talking a good 12 hours when you're going to have high winds, heavy rain, possibility of tornadoes and that. It's not a good situation for Florida by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, now for us, sorry, I'm having trouble talking. I kind of got a chest cold over the weekend and it's affected my voice. Okay, so nothing going on in the local area, and nothing will be for a while. We have the chance for getting a sprinkly shower Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, but don't get excited. I don't think anybody gets anything more than a sprinkle, and most of us won't get anything any one of those days. So it's not good news as far as needing the rainfall, but it could be worse news. So airport temperatures at 7 p.m. Have dropped into the 60s pretty much everywhere. It has 50s in Washington Courthouse and Chillicothe. Look at these low temperatures forecast for tonight. Brookville down in the Whitewater River Valley, 39. 39 in Maysville, 38 in Vanceburg, both along the Ohio River there. 39 in Batavia. Coast of Batavia is in a low spot in Claremont County also. And everybody else in the lower 40s, although any location in a stream valley could very easily end up with temperatures in the upper 30s for a short time in the morning. This evening, the sun sets at 7:13, 66 right now, dropping to 53 by 11 p.m. Overnight, look for a low temperature of 43. Again, many areas in the 30s. And then tomorrow, look for a high of 71 degrees. And that'll be between 3, 4, and 5 p.m. Excuse me. And kind of like today, and that's just about normal for this time of year. All right, now the Climate Prediction Center. In the 6 to 10 day outlook has us actually cooler than normal through the 17th. Lots of hot air out to the west. Then as we head to the 21st, that warmer than normal creeps a little bit eastward, so we go from below normal to warmer than normal. And then if you look at the 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, warmer than normal as we head on into November. So we're already looking at warmer than normal weather into November. Okay, and we know we got a lot of much needed rainfall, but we did not get enough to make it better. I mean, we were still in droughty conditions. Not as bad as it was, but at least it's not moist by any stretch of the imagination. So let's look at the precipitation outlook. Look at that. Most of the lower 48 drier than normal based on that color scheme through the 17th. Really doesn't get any better through the 21st. And as we head into the 22nd of October through the 4th of November, still drier than normal where we are, but everything's beginning to shift to the east a little bit. So you can count on fairly warm weather, a lack of rainfall as we head on into the month of November. Now your 7-day forecast looks like this. Low tonight 43, high tomorrow 71, 44 and 73 Wednesday, 45 and 72 Thursday, 47 and 75 Friday. Now this is like my favorite kind of weather. Kind of chilly mornings where it's too cool to sit outside with a cup of coffee unless you bundle up, but it's nice and warm with sunshine in the afternoon. But it's the kind of sunshine without the humidity that you can step into the shade and it feels cool, step into the sun and you feel warm. We do warm up to well above normal temperatures. I mean, 72, this is right at normal, so all these days up until Monday are warmer than normal. So near normal low temperatures, above normal high temperatures. And again, even though it's not indicated here, there are a couple of weak fronts or troughs coming our way Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And even though we've got a lot of sunshine in there, there might be a sprinkle in any one of those systems. But there is no precipitation in the 7-day forecast that is going to bring us relief. Now, if we go to beyond the 7-day forecast, notice high temperatures about normal, okay, either a little bit above or a little bit below. Low temperatures, 7 days in a row in the 40s. And we do have that chance of rain. Again, raindrop with a question mark, so not a sure thing. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the 18th through the 21st. We do have that slight chance of getting some showers, but in that, even if you get one of those showers each and every day of that 4-day stretch, you're not going to get enough rain to make up for anything that's out there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 14-day temperature outlook, and you can see high temperatures dip to about normal for a few days and back to above normal. Same thing on the low temperature side. So it looks like we are in for, in here, I was going to show it to you full screen, but it looks like we are in for a warm, dry weather as we head through the rest of the month and into November. And we've been kind of talking about that. If you watch frequently at 7:15 Mondays through Friday, I've been talking about that for months now, that it looks like for the most part, warmer and drier than normal weather is going to continue. Okay, so let me switch over to the other camera here, camera 1. All right, let's see, there we go, camera 1. Notice how I look bigger and I encroach on your personal space even more. I've said this to people before. I'm a person that has a pretty big area of personal space. So I know some people can talk like this close to each other, and it's like that creeps me out. I prefer it at arm length. So when I'm on camera and it looks like I'm too close to you, I apologize because I'm pretty sensitive to that myself. All right, let's take a look at what people on Facebook are commenting about. All right. Okay, Bridget Heilman Short wants to know if her daughter lives in Wesley Chapel. Let me see where that is. Wesley Chapel. We got the internet. Wesley Chapel. Oh, I found it. Here it is. Okay, Wesley Chapel. Well, that is kind of like... Wesley Chapel's pretty far inland, and it looks from the terrain like it's a little bit higher, although there's some low spots there. So the only thing I would say is if I lived there, I would be leaving until the hurricane's gone. That's just the safest thing to do because it's going to come, according to the latest forecast, it's coming right through there. Katie Lynn said, wow, it intensified so quickly. It absolutely did, Katie. As a matter of fact, it intensified it was tied for the third. Forgot which graphic I'm looking at. Tied for the second fastest strengthening from Cat 1 to Cat 5 on record. So yeah, really fast. 18 hours to go from Cat 1 to Cat 5. Remember, Cat 5 has wind speed, the lower wind speed is 157 miles an hour. And if we go back and look at that graphic, let's see. So 18 hours for its strengthening. There you woo, some days. Okay, there you can see it full screen. So only 18 hours to go from Cat 1 to Cat 5. And if we look at the next graphic, the wind speeds for a minimal, the low-level Cat 5 is 157 miles an hour, and Milton's already way above that at 180 miles an hour. It's only 10 miles an hour behind Allen, the strongest hurricane to ever exist in the Gulf of Mexico that we know of. Of course, there could be some in records before history and before written records were made. But overall, I mean, it's tied for the third strongest hurricane already. So it went from a 1 to an historic hurricane in almost no time whatsoever. Okay, let me get back to this here. That was Katie Lynn. Oh, wow, Katie Lynn said she wants to know if her friends are in an evacuation zone. She relocated back to Cincinnati from Tampa Clearwater last June. She escaped Hurricane Irma and Ian, and don't forget Helene. You escaped that one too, and this is stronger than all those. So you made a good choice, but I don't have the exact locations of the evacuation zones, but my understanding is anybody within a certain distance or a certain elevation of sea level has been ordered to evacuate, and they're mandatory down in Florida. So let me see if I can find a map of it here. And we'll see, okay? Okay, so here's the thing from floridadisaster.org, know your zone, know your home. Okay, and so it's kind of complicated because they've got all these different zones. And let's see. It looks like almost everything from Sarasota up to, oh my gosh. Well, let me try again here. I don't know if this is just the zones or if this is. My point is that I don't care if I was living down there and this was coming, I wouldn't wait for them to tell me to evacuate. I would get gone fast. As a matter of fact, my son's mother and stepfather have a condo down there in the Tampa area, and luckily they're not down there. And so I called my son and said, hey, if they're down there, you better get them out. So, when will regular rain return to Ohio? Looks like we're in another dry stretch. We certainly are, Nick. That's from Nick Fisher. And I don't think, based on what we just saw, I think we're looking at the middle of November into December before it returns, and that's if the La Nina pattern develops. Okay, Matt Watson wants to know if it'll weaken some if Milton will weaken some as it interacts with Mexico. Looks like the track keeps the eye offshore, but was not sure if part of the storm was going onshore would impact it. Okay, so let's go to that map here, and I'll give it to you full screen. Okay, and what he was referring to, see how close it is to the Yucatan Peninsula down there? Now, it's a relatively compact, I mean, the cloud shield is big, but as far as like the feeder bands and that, relatively small. But according to this, the Hurricane Center does not expect it to weaken at all as it passes through past the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, which is, where Cancun is there. And so the answer is it doesn't look like it's going to. It looks like the Hurricane Center feels it'll stay at Cat 5 all the way to a few hundred miles off the coast of Florida when it drops to a Cat 4. And even a Category 3 it's not like, whew, it's only going to be a Category 3. It's like, oh God, it's going to be a Category 3. We still have to get out of here. because oftentimes other factors influence how strong the storm surge is other than just the strength of the storm itself. Okay? And let's see. Robert Davis, you sound like a meteorologist. Boring, dry weather. Yep, that's what it is. Doesn't really challenge our forecasting skills, that's for sure, Robert. But every once in a while, it's nice to have a day or 2 or 3 or 6 weeks when you aren't challenged and it's a little slowdown, so you're not running on empty all the time. Any severe chances for us anytime soon? From Rachel. No, Rachel, I don't think we see any chance of severe weather for a while. Okay. Sam, thank you for watching, and thanks for the compliment. Thursday morning around 5 a.m. flying to Miami from Cincinnati. Don't think you're going to get there. Okay. The hurricane is coming on shore. Okay, and this is from Rose Johnson. Rose, the hurricane's coming on shore, according to this forecast, about 2 a.m. in Tampa. That means across the entire Florida Peninsula at that time will be high winds, heavy rain, and they're just not going to fly to Miami from Cincinnati. To get around it, they'd have to fly thousands of miles out of their way. And so I'm just going to say my forecast is that 5 a.m. Thursday morning, your flight to Miami will be canceled. I don't think there's any chance you'll get there Thursday morning, or Thursday for that matter. And Susan Wally says, thanks for the cool weather. Well, I tell you what, Susan, I do not take credit for the good as long as you don't blame me for the bad. All right, so yeah, Jordan, and these are comments that were made before I just said what I had to say about the flight. And Jordan Gerlach said, I'm sorry, it says Thursday 2 a.m. as it comes on shore. So it's Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So Thursday at 2 a.m. is typically most people call it Wednesday night. So Wednesday night to midnight Thursday, and then 2 a.m. Thursday will be coming on shore. So if you're flying out of Cincinnati at 5 a.m. on Thursday heading for Miami, you're not going to get there. Rod J. Anchor says, we need rain in Alabama. You know, we certainly need it up here too, Rod. So, and again, thanks for watching, and I hope you get the rain soon. It doesn't look like it'll be that much for you from Hurricane Milton. And then Rod says, oh, prayers for Florida. Yeah, that's not, that's the thing is you need rain in Alabama, but you're thinking about your fellow citizens down in Florida, so that's a good thing. Okay, let me go. That's the end of the comments. Let me go back over all this stuff again. Okay, so I'm going to just back the computer up a few graphics. Well, there's weather around here, no big deal. Now, if you take a look at some information I looked up, Milton has strengthened from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 in 18 hours. The only other storms that have done it that fast or faster are Maria, which is tied for second, and Wilma, which is took 12 hours. Now, Wilma was that remarkable 2005 season where New Orleans got so whacked. Wilma and Rita were two major hurricanes in that year, and of course, we all know what happened to New Orleans in 2005. And then, again, why this is happening, why it intensified so fast is because, 30 or 40 years ago when I started my career, you'd be lucky to see a 75-foot layer with water this warm. But because most of the warming that's taking place on Earth is taking place in the oceans, the amount of surface water that's very warm is really much deeper. So it's the same at 120 feet down in the Gulf of Mexico or along the track, the forecast track of Milton. 120 feet down, it's the same temperature as the surface. You go all the way down to 222 feet below the surface, and it's still 80 degrees, and that's enough to maintain a hurricane. So churning up the water like this that the hurricane does can't bring up cooler water that kind of puts the brakes on development. So with that very warm water, not only at the surface, but also churned up, it just doesn't begin, there's no regulator there. There's no stopgap Everything just keeps going and going and going. And that's what's happening right now. And again, if you look at this, you are looking at the strongest hurricane winds in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, these aren't all Atlantic hurricanes. These are just the hurricanes with the strongest winds in the Gulf. The strongest was in 1980. Hurricane Allen came into the Gulf with 190-mile-an-hour winds. Before they named hurricanes, the one that occurred over the Labor Day weekend in 1933 had 185-mile-an-hour winds. That one came on shore in the Florida Panhandle. There was Rita in 2005. There was Milton in 2024 and Camille in 1969. And if you look at this, Allen number 1, the Labor Day hurricane number 2, and tied for third strongest hurricane based on wind speeds of all time in the Gulf of Mexico are Rita and presently Milton. Okay, now, and again, pretty soon the Hurricane Center will be issuing an update. Let me see, and because they issue them on Central Time, based on where the hurricane's expected to go, and that they issue them based on usually Central Daylight Time or Eastern Daylight Time or Atlantic Time, and so sometimes you've kind of got to look at what's going on there. But let's see. NHC. Now, they still haven't issued the update. The last update was at 4 o'clock. And according to the Hurricane Center, the next update comes any time now, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So we are waiting for that. And sometimes they come in a few minutes early. I'll try and keep watching here to see if they have any new information before we go for the evening. But overall, it looks like the latest one, let's see. Yeah, still 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, so you can see that list. So based on this, it's already an historic hurricane with winds that are unbelievable. And if we take a look at that latest forecast, that was the 5 p.m. update, and that'll change to 8 p.m. when the update comes across. 180-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Now, it's one thing to get a gust of 70, but 180 miles an hour would just knock down almost any frame structure if it hits it broadside. Gust to 220 miles an hour. Okay? That is just a devastating hurricane. Almost nothing will stay intact in winds like that. And so that's why everybody's keeping their fingers crossed and praying that the Hurricane Center is correct, saying that the velocity and the strength of Milton will come down to a Cat 3. Even though a Cat 3 is still a major hurricane, it's a heck of a lot better than the Cat 5 like we have right now. Okay, so and you can see the path. Even though it's going to graze, it's going to stay offshore of the Yucatan Peninsula. Even though part of the circulation will graze it, they keep it as a Cat 5 all the way into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Then it begins to decrease in intensity as it approaches land in Florida. Part of the reason that happens is because a good portion of the circulation will be traveling over the Florida Peninsula, and there's more friction. There's no water to add energy. I mean, there's water, but not like ocean water, to add energy to the storm, and so it does begin to weaken a little bit. Now, look what happens. If you look closely, you can see that it comes onshore, according to the forecast, as a Cat 3, crosses the entire peninsula at hurricane strength, and is a 1 by the time it gets offshore here. And then the good news is, if there is any good news, the good news is it weakens as it heads on out, becomes a tropical storm, then just a tropical depression by the time it gets out here with 65-mile-an-hour winds. And then the good news for northern Georgia, for eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, especially for South Carolina, West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, all those areas up here that got all that rain and all the other damage, it's not going to affect them at all. So the last thing in the world people in western North Carolina need is any kind of bad weather at all. So far that's pretty good. So let's see here. I don't know if it'll make it to the Hurricane Center's website before it makes it to our system. That's why I keep looking down here and see if we can, still got the 4 o'clock. Sometimes they're pretty quick on those. Like when we had Helene, For the 11 o'clock update, it was coming in at like 10:37, so they got all the data in and got it taken care of pretty quickly. So let's go on and let's review the forecast here. Okay, so in your 7-day forecast, and then we'll go back and check with that graphic before I call it a night. Okay, in the 7-day forecast, we really don't have any rain indicated here. Now there could be a sprinkle Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, but it's just insignificant. Nothing to count on canceling your plans for, nothing to count on getting your garden wet, just dry weather with that chance of a sprinkle. So 71, 73, and 72 for the highs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with lows in the 40s. Stays in the 40s again Friday up to 75, and then lows in the 50s with highs in the 80s until we get to Monday, and then another shot of cooler air coming our way. And look what that does here for beyond the 7-day forecast. Okay, for beyond the 7-day forecast, what that does is have high temperatures, upper 60s to lower 70s, and that's right around normal. Okay, that seems chilly, but it's right around normal for this time of year. You could see it better, I guess, if I put it full screen. And low temperatures in the 40s, so cool to chilly mornings, pleasant afternoons with a lot of sunshine, and just a scant chance of rain Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, along with Monday. And again, those would just be scattered showers that might settle the dust a little bit, but really wouldn't be enough to make a big difference for your garden or for your lawn or anything else. Okay, still don't have that in yet. So let me go back to the hurricane track forecast. Sometimes it's interesting how these work because, you know, the Hurricane Center issues something and it's got to go all these different directions, and sometimes it makes it to their website first. Sometimes we get it almost instantly in our weather system, and it looks like they've probably got a lot of deciding to do before they go through it here. So let's go back to that, and we'll see if the 8 o'clock update is in. And there it is. It came in. The 8 o'clock update still has 180 mile an hour winds. Gusts are still at 220 miles an hour. Look at the pressure. Now that may not be impressive to you, but it's down to 897 millibars. That is really, really low pressure. And they expect, again, the forecast really hasn't changed, expect it to stay Cat 5 into the open waters of the Eastern Gulf and come on shore as a Cat 3. So they really haven't changed the forecast much, and the current conditions are about the same also. So that's it for now. Now tomorrow we'll do the same thing. We'll go over this in a lot of detail. By tomorrow at this time, we should know if they're thinking it's going to stay a Cat 5 or weaken, and we hope it does weaken as it moves into Florida. But for us, not much weather going on, cool mornings, nice afternoons, maybe a sprinkle Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then maybe at the end of beyond the 7-day, a few days with a little bit of shower activity, but no long-term soaking rains, no severe weather on the way it looks right now, just kind of dry weather with cool mornings and near normal afternoons. So that's it for now. Thank you for joining me. Have yourself a nice evening, and I tell you what, I'll be back tomorrow and we'll go into what all the information we have on Hurricane Milton in as much detail as we can. So have yourself a nice evening, and thanks for watching.